On this week's NESN Patriots podcast, we break down New England's competitive but ultimately unsurprising loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. We also evaluate how Bailey Zappe has performed in his 3 weeks as the Patriots starter, discuss the rampant speculation about Bill Belichick's job status, and share an update on where the Patriots currently stand in the 2024 NFL draft order. Hello and welcome into this week's edition of the NESN Patriots Podcast. My name is Zach Cox, joined as always by Dakota, Randall. It's a rough start to the week for the NESN boys, I would say. My hot water heater is broken. I found out this morning, so I'm currently unshowered. Not feeling too good about it, but we're fighting through it. Dakota still hanging out in COVID protocol down in Rhode Island, but on the upswing. You're just about back to full health, right?
Yeah. What did Jamal Williams say? It's all dog up in this mug. I'm good. That's where I'm at. I'm fine. I'll be okay.
And the Patriots also not having the start to the week that they would like. They returned to their losing ways on Sunday, losing 27-17 to the Kansas City Chiefs. It was a kind of a return to form from the Patriots team that we've seen in many games this season after getting that win last Thursday in Pittsburgh. They kept things competitive with the Chiefs for a half. Bailey Zappe looked good for a half, but they fell apart after halftime, and just a parade of costly penalties and a very ill-timed turnover continued to hurt them, as those factors really have all season. Dakota, coming out of this game, just big picture thoughts. What was your kind of main takeaway from what we watched on Sunday?
Yeah, well, my main sort of thought was just that it was a very on-brand loss for this version of the Patriots. Like, there wasn't that much surprising that happened in it, including the fact that, I did think this game would be close, or that, if depending on how certain things went, the Patriots would have a chance to win this game. And they certainly did to an extent. I mean, they had a lead in the second quarter. They had an opportunity to go back ahead in the second half, and Bailey Zappe throws that bad interception, and then the snowball started rolling one way, and they never could get it back. And so it's just, at the end of the day, obviously they're a worse team than the Chiefs, and it was always going to be tough to win that game. But I thought you saw that, the Patriots have certain pieces, especially on defense, where they can be competitive. It's just that when push comes to shove, the offense just doesn't have enough to keep up with really any offense in the NFL, let alone one led by Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, the game really turned, I would say, right at the beginning of the second half, because the Chiefs took a 4-point lead going into halftime, kicked a field goal in their first drive of the second half. But with how efficiently the Patriots offense had been playing before halftime, it didn't look like that was a death sentence for them by any means. But then Bailey Zappe comes out very first play of the second half for the Patriots, scrambles to his right, makes a really nice move to get away around a Chiefs pass rusher, and then just throws the ball directly to Willie Gay. Interception. Chiefs take over at the 7-yard line, score 2 plays later. And that was essentially the game, with almost 2 full quarters still to go. The Patriots never got back to within 10 points. They did score 1 touchdown late, but that was off of a short field coming from a Jelani Tavai interception. Didn't really seem like they were attempting to stage much of a comeback in the second half. I thought some of Bill Belichick's game management decisions, I guess you could call them, were a little bit odd. You saw the Patriots punting on 4th and short or 4th and manageable, once from their own 42, I believe, and once from their own 33, down 17 points in the fourth quarter. You got to imagine if they were thinking that they had a chance of staging any sort of comeback there, they would have gone for it in those situations, especially because they did go for it once on 4th down during the first half and got a touchdown out of it. You just didn't see a ton of urgency from the offense either after halftime. Ezekiel Elliott even pointed it out after the game, saying he kind of wishes that they had a little bit more tempo, were moving a little bit more quickly. And I think you saw that on their final drive as well. But it really seemed like, I don't know, Bill Belichick essentially went in to kind of pack it in turtle mode once they fell behind.
Maybe?
But
Quiet tank mode.
Could be tank mode, but it seemed like they were playing to not get blown out really at that point, rather than kind of selling out to stage a comeback, which could have potentially, if it failed, set up the Chiefs with a couple of short fields and maybe made the final score line a little bit more lopsided than it was.
Yeah, and listen, the other part of this, me saying this was kind of an odd brand game for the Patriots, where if you squint, you can see a path to where this easily could have been tied up at the end, or the Patriots in a position to win, because you have the missed field goal by Chad Ryland. The Chiefs had one too, but the Patriots had a missed field goal by Chad Ryland. That's 3 points, and they had 4 points wiped off the board by Con McDermott getting that holding penalty that wiped out the second touchdown for Hunter Henry. So that would have made it a 3-point game. And then I think that holding call on Alex Austin that wiped out that fumble recovery was a bogus call. I mean, I know a lot of people had issues with the officials. It was kind of soft both ways, but I thought that call was pretty bad. So the Patriots could have had a short field there. Now, at the end of the day, would they have capitalized on all those opportunities? History tells us no, with how they've played in those moments. But regardless, it kind of plays into the thought that, as bad as this team is, and they are bad, they are strangely close to not being completely terrible. I don't know. It's weird. Like they kind of had a path to winning this game, even though at the end of the day, the game didn't feel that close.
Yeah, and even though they did let up 27 points and easily could have been 34 if the Chiefs hadn't taken a knee around like the 10-yard line or whatever it was late in the game, the defense came out of this game pretty pleased with their performance. They only allowed 2 touchdowns. One of them came after that Bailey Zappe interception that set the Chiefs up inside the 10-yard line. They forced a couple of field goals. They really did a nice job of defending Travis Kelce, who was essentially a non-factor in this game from a statistical perspective. He only finished with 5 catches for 28 yards. I think his presence and the Patriots' focus on him freed up some openings for some other players, certainly. And you definitely saw a couple of costly breakdowns for the defense. But coming out of this game, it was not like the Patriots got shredded by Patrick Mahomes and this Chiefs team. The kind of more of the blame for this loss, again, lies with the offense and its inability to put together a complete performance, a complete game. But
yeah.
Let's take
the one other thing I wanted to add about, you were talking about Belichick's play calling at the end and maybe the quiet tank mode. I think that's all that stuff is totally legit. I mean, I think and that's been a pattern here the last couple of years where they've played way too conservative, and it's felt like he's been managing a game so that the score didn't look that bad. And so I think 2 things can be true. For one, I think this is a little bit of hypocrisy or BS from certain people, whether it be in broadcasting or just media in general, where you hear people say like, they're going to lose anyway. What do they have to lose? Like, you have to go for it, be aggressive against the Chiefs. What do you care what the score looks like? That's fine, but that doesn't, when people go back and look at games, they go back and say you got blown out, you got completely smoked. Nobody goes back after the fact and starts dissecting it like, oh well, actually some of the score was inflated by the short field and going for it on 4th down. And no, you go back and look and say, oh, you got your butts kicked by whoever. And so I think I don't like when people say that, what do you care? No one's going to talk about the score. You're going to lose anyway. I think that's a lie. But on the other hand, Belichick shouldn't care about that stuff. I mean, he's right to know that people would probably unfairly kill him if the score got overinflated. But the reality is it shouldn't matter. If his true priority is what's best for the team and giving the team the best chance to win, none of that other crap should come into factor at all. And I don't know how you can watch the way he's managed these games the last few years and not believe that it has factored into some of his decision-making, because they absolutely call some of these games in a way to keep the score, in the realm of not being embarrassing. And so I absolutely think that criticism is fair, even though I think there is some contradiction on the other side of it.
Well, and especially given the report that came out about 12 hours before this game from Ian Rappaport, that Robert Kraft has not yet decided what's going to happen with Bill Belichick, and a strong finish to the season, whatever that entails, could potentially save his job, which I know we'll get into all that a little bit later. But it's interesting timing when you see, hey, this guy needs to have a respectable finish to the season to maybe keep his job. Maybe we'll make this game not look like we lost 51-17. We'll make it look like we lost 27-17. Just the timing is notable, I would say. But again, we'll get into Bill Belichick a little bit later. First, we got to do our 2 up, 2 down from this game. Dak, I'll let you start. Who are your two up from this?
First up is Christian Barmore, who I think he had something like 5 or 6 tackles, another sack, a couple quarterback hits, the tackle for a loss. I think
He could really be in this every week at this point.
Yeah, I think he has been for like the past like 5 or 6 weeks. I mean, he's been excellent. There's not really much else to say at this point, and he's been. I mean, I thought he really stood out in the run game yesterday. He's been awesome, and next year is his the final year of his rookie contract. You wonder if they start talking extension this offseason. I think you have to. He's one of the few blue chip foundational pieces you have on the roster. If you can lock up someone like him, and you have him, Christian Gonzalez, maybe Marte Mapu and Keon White turn into something. I mean, you have pieces there, and I think they just have to make sure someone like Barmore doesn't get away. My other up is Bailey Zappe in the first half. I think I have the stats here. Hold on a moment. Yeah, in the first half, he was 17 of 19 for 141 yards and 1 touchdown. And I thought all of it was legit. I thought he made some really good throws. He certainly was game. He played with a lot of poise and energy. I thought he just played really well. And of course, the wheels fell off in the second half, which we'll get to in a bit. But I think in the first half, full marks. I thought he played really well.
Yeah, basically the same story that we've had the last 2 weeks with Bailey Zappe. Really good first halves. Then the wheels have kind of come off after halftime. My two up, first, Zappe's number one target, Hunter Henry, 9 targets, 7 catches, 66 yards, 1 touchdown. As you mentioned earlier, could have had the second touchdown if it hadn't been called back for a holding penalty on Connor McDermott. He's been by far the most consistent target for Zappe over these last 2 games. He basically should have 4 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. Did go down with a knee injury late in the game on you got to go back and watch the play a little bit more closely, but I think it's a situation where maybe you can criticize Zappe for putting him in the position that he was in when he had that injury, which was kind of a throw into the flat and a defender hit him right in the knees. So we'll see what his status is moving forward. We'll get into some of the other Patriots injuries later in this show as well, because there were quite a few of them. But Henry has definitely been one of the Patriots' better offensive players over the last couple of weeks, and he's going to be a free agent. He's definitely on my list of players that the Patriots should work to bring back next season, because I think he brings a lot, both from an on-field perspective and as a leader, and from a leadership perspective as a Patriots captain. My other up, Alex Austin, Patriots cornerback. I don't think he was awesome in this game. He had a couple of penalties, including one that wiped out a fumble recovery late in the game. I think it was a bit of a ticky-tack call. I didn't really agree with it. But overall, from someone who did not expect to start in this game and ended up playing every single defensive snap in place of JC Jackson, who did not play in this game, was active but did not play, was not spotted on the sideline for reasons that at the time of this recording have not been fully explained. According to his agent, he was dealing with some sort of mental health issues. Again, we don't know the details on all that, but it was something that cropped up right before the game, between the time that the inactive list was finalized 90 minutes before kickoff and when the game actually kicked off, because the Patriots ruled Shaun Wade out as a healthy scratch for this game. So he was not an option. They're one of their depth cornerbacks. So it was essentially Alex Austin literally playing every single snap in this game. He had just made his Patriots debut the week before, had only, I believe, 18 career defensive snaps coming into this week. Again, it wasn't a sensational performance on the field by him, but Belichick said he, quote, played competitively. And that's what I saw from him as well. For a rookie coming in a tough position like that, I think he had a respectable outing on Sunday.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, the JC Jackson thing, obviously that is what it is. I mean, I don't particularly, just because it certainly seems like it is something mental health related and not.
It's hard to really get into and discuss too deeply.
Like, I'm not going to really speculate about it or certainly present it in any way that sort of criticizes him or the team, just because we don't know. But obviously it's a tough situation and something to monitor. And obviously that reunion has not gone the way anybody hoped it would. But on Alex Austin, I thought he looked good. And I also just think generally, with Jack Jones gone, and who knows what you're going to get from Marcus Jones next year, what he's going to come back and look like. I mean, I think, he's a promising player, but there were issues that popped up in training camp. His size always seems to be an issue. I think, the Patriots have a couple of intriguing young corners going into next year's training camp, and Isaiah Bolden, who we've all forgotten about, and Alex Austin, that, maybe one of those guys sort of steps up as, has a real role in this team next year, unless, because they're probably going to have to go and draft somebody or sign somebody or whatever, given John Jones' age, and you just can't have just Christian Gonzalez. And so, maybe Alex Austin enters that conversation. Who knows?
I think overall too, the way that the Patriots cornerback group has been able to hold up this year with all the injuries and other circumstances that have come up, it's been pretty impressive. I think it's a credit to the coaches, to Mike Pellegrino and Vangelo Bentley and the guys who are working with these players every day. Because if you kind of mapped out the blueprint of this season coming in, you're going to say, hey, you're going to lose Christian Gonzalez in week 4. Hey, Jack Jones is going to be off the team by midseason. JC Jackson's going to come back, but he's not going to be the same player, and he's going to be dealing with some off the field stuff. Jonathan Jones is going to have injuries. You would probably say, man, this team is probably giving up like 45 points a game and 400 yards a game. I think they've done a good job of working some of those depth guys in there, and a nice job from a scheme perspective too, to just kind of account for all of these absences for whatever reason. But yeah, no, I do agree that they do need to make some moves there this offseason to kind of beef up that group a little bit. You're 2 down.
Yeah, and I also think the cornerback group, they deserve extra credit for, Patriots haven't had exactly an amazing pass rush since Judon went down, which usually helps the corners. They haven't had that luxury. So yeah, it has been impressive what they've done. So yeah, 2 down for me. The offensive line, just, and obviously injuries, I'm sure, they had a big part of it. They were down to Vidarian Lowe at left tackle after Connor McDermott got hurt. Cole Strange suffered a knee injury that looked serious. We'll have to see whether or not it is. But, I think the Patriots in total, let's see, Ezekiel Elliott and Kevin Harris combined for, I don't know, like 38 yards or something. I don't have it right in front of me. But
it
also
was 50 yards total, 50 yards on 15 carries. But 18 of those were on the one Kevin Harris touchdown run.
Yeah, and then they gave up 4 sacks. So listen, I just think ultimately that prevented the offense from really being able to do anything in the second half. And then Bailey Zappe, second half, is in my down section. Same as really against the Steelers. It just wasn't good enough. There was obviously the bad pick. He completed 6 of 12 passes for 39 yards and that 1 interception. And really, and I know we're going to get into him more in a bit, but I just think the common thread in both of these games is that, in the first half, especially in this game, it looked like the Chiefs wanted to load up and stack the box and stop the run, and sort of dare Bailey Zappe to beat them. They didn't really have a lot of guys in coverage. And then it seemed like Bailey Zappe almost took him by surprise. In the second half, they were like, all right, enough with that. We're actually going to play you straight up. And then Bailey Zappe couldn't do anything. And that's kind of what happened against the Steelers too, which I think ultimately shows the limitations that he has. Part of that too is, again, the offensive line, the lack of weapons that the Patriots have, but also Bailey Zappe just not being that good. And he was not very good in the second half.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the numbers right now. I think his passer rating in the first half of these last 2 games is something like 130. And then in the second half, it goes all the way down to 29. It's basically just been 2 completely different outings from him in the first and second half. And then that's happened in each of the last 2 games. My 2 down, Chad Ryland is 1. He missed his 3rd consecutive field goal attempt in this game. It was a 41-yarder. Made his extra points, but even some of those looked a little bit dicey. The Patriots basically committed to him for the rest of the season, in my mind, when they cut Matthew Wright, the kicker that they briefly signed to their practice squad. But given the way that this season has played out for Ryland, you have to imagine that they're going to bring in some sort of competition for him going into next season, going into training camp. I can't imagine he would be even remotely guaranteed a roster spot in 2024 based on the way that he's performed so far. It's kind of emblematic of the Patriots special teams as a whole. Very little has gone right for them in that area this season. And then the penalties. I mentioned it earlier. The number of penalties wasn't exorbitantly high for the Patriots in this game, but basically every one that they committed was very detrimental and either took away a big play for the Patriots or led directly to a big play for the Chiefs. I'm going to pull them up and read them off now. But the first one on the very first play of the game, opening kickoff, Jalen Reagor rips off a 46-yard return, called back because of a holding call on Brendan Schooler. You look at it on tape. That's another one that was a little bit of a questionable call, a borderline call. Not all of these were blatant mistakes by the Patriots, but when they add up the way that they did, it kind of paints a pretty clear picture. The second one, hold on, say something for a second. I got to pull up these penalties. But
well, yeah, I don't really know what to add. I was browsing around the internet too. Yeah, no, I think the penalties were, I mean, they've been an issue for a while for this team. They're just, I mean, the coaching clearly isn't
years,
what it
really.
used to be.
I feel like we were talking about this in like 2020.
Yeah, and I think that, and I think the other one I was going to sneak into the down if I could find them was situational defense, or just specifically on third down, because I think the Patriots gave up, I think they only gave up like 5 or 6 third downs, but regardless, there were some big gains in lock situations on there. One of 31 yards, 21 yards, 11 yards. That's kind of been an ongoing theme in certain games this season too. So I thought the third down defense also deserved a shout out.
Agreed. Okay. Got the penalties now. So number one was a Schooler hold on the opening kickoff. Number two, Demario Douglas face mask on a catch that would have brought the Patriots, I believe, inside the Chiefs' 10-yard line. Very rare for you to see a face mask call on a receiver before a catch, like during a route. But you watch the replay, he did get a little hook on Trey McDuffie's face mask. That turns what would have been a 1st and goal into a 1st and 25 from the 27-yard line. Chad Ryland ends up missing the field goal later on that drive. Number 3, illegal contact on Jonathan Jones wipes out an intentional grounding by Patrick Mahomes. One play later, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a 48-yard catch and run on a screen pass down the right sideline, just a complete and total coverage bust from the Patriots. And then the Chiefs end up scoring their first touchdown later on that drive. Number 4, the holding penalty that I mentioned before on Connor McDermott that wiped out what would have been the second Hunter Henry touchdown. And then number 5, the Alex Austin holding penalty that took away the forced fumble by Jonathan Jones, fumble recovery by Jabril Peppers. That would have given the Patriots possession near midfield early in the third quarter. Instead, Kansas City goes down, kicks a field goal, goes up 17-10. So it's just again, this has been happening for the Patriots for years. The margin for error for this team is very slim. They usually aren't a team that can even survive 2 or 3 plays like that, but to have 5 of them that all had direct and significant outcomes on the outcome of this game, it's bad. It's bad for a game to hinge on 5 kind of key penalties like that.
Yeah, no, it is. And, you add it into the pile when you're, sort of talking about whether the Patriots should move on from Bill Belichick, and, whether it's not losing the locker room, but, just the needing a change of voice and all this kind of stuff, because it's just a lot of these things are patterns where, playing way too conservatively, almost playing not to get blown out, penalties, bad situational awareness, all this kind of stuff that typically is where he excelled and gave the Patriots an edge, now are where they're coming up short in a lot of these areas. And it's been going on for a while now. And so all that stuff has to factor in when you talk about whether he should stay on as coach of the Patriots.
And that is a perfect segue there to our next topic, the biggest topic in Boston sports right now, the biggest topic in the NFL right now, probably. Will Bill Belichick be fired, traded, mutually parted ways with this offseason, in some way not be back with the Patriots in 2024? Last week, we talked about the Tom Curran report that his sources made it, quote, very clear to him that Robert Kraft had already decided to move on from Belichick after the season. A couple days later, we got that report from Ian Rappaport that said Kraft had not made up his mind, was going to see how the rest of the season played out, and might actually have a substantial waiting period after the season ended before making a final decision. We don't really know where things stand on that. I would say it certainly seems to be trending toward Belichick not being back next season. I think it's hard to it's getting harder and harder to justify as the Patriots losses continue to stack up. And at this point, I don't think you're even going to be able to play the, hey, we won 4 of our last 5 games. We're trending upward. Bailey Zappe looks like he might be something. The team is coming together. We just dealt with too many injuries. We just need to kind of have a fresh start next year with a little bit of a better roster. I think that case is becoming increasingly more difficult to make as the weeks go on. But what was your reaction to these? I don't know, I guess you could call them conflicting reports, and just where things seem to stand with Belichick and the team right now.
Yeah, I mean, on the Rappaport thing, I mean, listen, I'm not like going to question the reporting of the sourcing. I mean, he obviously is one of our tied in guys in the NFL. But the moment I read that thing the other day, I kind of had okay, I didn't really buy it. Not to say it was a lie. I just didn't buy the way it was presented and the way it was being received. For one, it's the same guy who had the report about Belichick's contract extension a few weeks back that we now know was, somewhere between, I don't know, incorrect and just packaged in a way that was not really fully accurate. It certainly seemed like it was coming from Belichick's camp in a way that, helped him out. And then the same guy comes out with one that, again, you wonder where it's coming from, if it's from Belichick's camp. But also, I mean, the more you read that report, to me, it's really not any different than from what Tommy Curran actually reported, just subtly different language. They both really say the same thing, that the expectation is that they're going to move on, but things can change. I think I saw Curran sort of react to it in the same way on NBC Sports in the hit, and I agree with everything he said. So like I thought it was kind of a nothing burger. That said, I do think it's interesting that there has been a sort of recent wave of reporting and sort of conjecture that maybe this isn't a done deal, both in terms of, Belichick being, definitely out, and also that Gerard Mayo may not be locked in as the likely successor. All this kind of stuff. I think there has been somewhat of a shift recently. And so who knows? For me, this ultimately comes down to, I think he probably has to go. I think he does have to go. I think it probably has been a done deal. And the only way I think it changes is I don't think he necessarily saves his job by anything that happens over the last few weeks. I just think it would be Robert Kraft getting cold feet and just maybe ultimately being like, I don't want to fire the best coach in NFL history. I think that's the only way it changes, is if at the 11th hour he just pulls his hand off the button.
I agree with that, because I don't think it would make a ton of sense for Belichick to be able to save his job, quote unquote, in the final 3 weeks of a 3-11 season. Like, what is it? If you finish with 5 wins, it's going to drastically change how Robert Kraft feels about this, rather than finishing with 3 or 4 wins. I don't know. I'm in the same boat on that. I think I can't imagine Robert Kraft watching kind of the product on the field and saying, all right, cool. Yeah, now this makes sense. I want to go with this. But there is always the possibility that, I mean, this is the single biggest decision that he's made since he took over the team in 1994. He's one of the few people in NFL history that's had to have to make this decision of, hey, I had this legendary coach who was so good for so long, but the results haven't been there lately. How long of a leash do I give him? I don't know. Based on all of his recent comments, and I say recent as in the last couple of years, because he doesn't speak publicly all that often, Robert Kraft has just stressed so strenuously that he wants the Patriots to be back in playoff contention, back competing for, at the very least, playoff wins, never mind championships, that to say all of that and then to have the season that the Patriots have, and then not make a change, I think that's tough to square. So I am expecting a change at the end of the season. Again, I think there's room for a change of heart, I guess, before that, but it does certainly seem to be trending in that direction. And then if it does go that way, the biggest question is obviously going to be who replaces him, because it has been very interesting to see some of the Mayo speculation that's come out lately, some of the Mike Vrabel conflicting reports about whether he could be a possibility to take over that job. You obviously would need to get a new general manager as well if Bill Belichick leaves. So a lot of additional considerations there. But yeah, it feels to me like we're coming to the end. Which, if that is the case, then Bill Belichick only has one game left at Gillette Stadium. Which
Crazy.
I know our colleague Sean McGuire wrote a story about this at the game the other night. It kind of didn't really dawn on me until last night that, oh yeah, he gets to do this one more time potentially. That Jets game may be the very last time that he is at Gillette as the Patriots head coach.
Yeah, it is kind of wild to think about it in those terms. And just like, we're only a few weeks away from like this coming to a head. I mean, I know most of the reporting, and I probably agree with this, indicates that like there's not going to be some Black Monday situation where he gets fired. But if there is, that's in 3 weeks, right?
Yep.
Exactly. So we won't have to talk about this for much longer potentially. And yeah, so I think that season finale could be very, very interesting for many reasons. For Belichick alone, is it the last game? Is that sort of made clear beforehand? Probably not. But if it is, if it's still lingering out there, what kind of reception does it get from the fans? I think we talked about this in a previous episode. Like, what kind of send off does he get, if any? What's the Patriots draft situation at that point? And how important is that game against the Jets? I just think it's going to be a fascinating setting, and I'm looking forward to it because it'll be a very interesting way for the season to end one way or another.
Yeah, and the timing of that eventual move will be very important as well, because Patriots aren't going to be the only team replacing or having to replace a head coach and general manager this offseason if they do indeed go down that route. So you'd imagine that they would want to get out ahead of that and have the largest pool of potential candidates available. But again, we'll have to see how all of that shakes out, because their situation is a little bit different than every other team in their same boat from a record standpoint. Quickly, we already touched on Zappe earlier, so we won't spend too much time on this, but it's been 3 weeks now since Bailey Zappe took over for Mac Jones. I think you could say he's shown flashes and good things in all 3 of his starts, but he's also been wildly inconsistent in all 3 of his starts. He has not put together a complete game yet. In his first game against the Chargers, it was a bad first half, followed up by an encouraging second half. And then the last 2 games against the Steelers and the Chiefs, very good first half, followed by pretty bad and disappointing second half. So 3 weeks in here, has he proven anything to you? Do you feel any differently about Bailey Zappe now than you did 3 weeks ago? And if you're looking forward to the Patriots roster next year, do you think either Zappe or Mac Jones will and or should be on the team when next season starts?
It's tough on Zappe. Not really. I still think, like, at the end of the day, he's a backup, and there's nothing that's happened at any point during his career that's made me think he's a starter in the NFL. I just think he's too small and he's too limited. I do think, it's hard not to watch him when he's at his best in these games and not think like, hey, at the very least, like, that is a good backup in the NFL.
He's fun.
Yeah,
he's got like Taylor Heineke vibes. He's like the kind of guy you send in, you're like, oh, he's doing some exciting stuff,
Yeah, he'd be a good backup on a good team, right? Where like you can scheme it up, where the offense or the weapons are good. Where if the starter goes out, like, like the backup has at least a chance to succeed. That's not really the case here in New England right now. But I think he can be a good backup on a good team, and that's no small thing. As far as who should be here next year, I still think like Mac Jones has the higher ceiling, and if I was going to hitch my wagons to either one of them, it would be Mac Jones, just because, again, I think he's the better quarterback. But I also think we all look at it and think he has to get a fresh start somewhere else. That's just the reality of the situation, unless like somehow, Belichick's gone. There's a whole revamping of the coaching staff and the personnel, and he effectively gets a fresh start here. But I don't see how that can happen or feel that way, given sort of all that's happened and the way the fan base has reacted toward him and all this stuff. So I think if either of them should be here, it would be Zappe, as the backup, maybe as the bridge, if they are fortunate enough to draft a quarterback. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think this has kind of been a missed opportunity for Bailey Zappe, and maybe you can't describe it that way because maybe this is just who he is. This is the kind of ceiling on his skill set. but he's really had a chance in these last couple of weeks, and especially in this game, to come out and essentially audition for both the Patriots and every other team in the NFL, to put some good tape on the field and say, hey, at the very least, you want me as your number 2 next year, and I'm going to give your starter a run for his money. I agree with what you said earlier. I don't think anybody can watch these 3 games and be like, I want Bailey Zappe to start for me next year. Like, he just hasn't shown enough. If everything had looked like the first half against Pittsburgh and Kansas City, then maybe you're working with something. But the fact that it hasn't manifested into a full game sample size yet, I think makes it pretty clear that his ceiling at the moment is as a backup. And on the Mac Jones thing, I think the only way that he's back next year is with a full scale cleaning of house of the coaching staff and all of the kind of offensive infrastructure. I can see the potential interest in a new regime coming in and saying, hey, this guy's under contract for $4 million. We're going to take a cap hit if we have to cut him. We might as well keep him around and see if we can rehabilitate him. Obviously depends on how that new coach feels about Jones as a player overall. But I would be very, very, very surprised if both Bill Belichick and Mac Jones are still with the Patriots once offseason workouts get going in 5 or 6 months.
Yeah, I'll make a case for keeping Mac Jones as the starting quarterback, with the caveat that you draft up at let's say Michael Penix is in the 2nd round. I don't know, like maybe he's one of these quarterbacks that gets up in the 1st. But if assuming you get a contingency plan, number 1, Mac Jones is not going to get a lot of money in free agency. The Patriots aren't picking up that 5th-year option, obviously. And then if they let him hit free agency, he's not going to get a lot of money. And Mac Jones probably in his mind has to know, like, there's a really good chance that if once I reach free agency, I'm getting nothing. So, the Patriots could lock him up right now on a super affordable deal, I'd imagine, if he'd even be interested in staying here. But I'm just saying you could get him on a really good discount, just based on what he's worth right now. And so then if you have him,
well, they already have him on a discount, though.
No,
he still has a year
but
left.
I'm saying you
could
extend him now, is what I'm saying. You sign him to the next contract, like how, like for Josh Allen signed his long-term extension going into the final year of his rookie deal, right?
Yeah.
So you could extend Mac Jones now for super cheap money. I'm just saying, but with the caveat of you then go draft someone like Marvin Harrison, you sign someone like T. Higgins, and somewhere in there you also figure out the left tackle thing. Like, I don't think any of those things are ridiculous, because you have the money to sign T. Higgins. You'll have the draft position probably to get Marvin Harrison if you want to, or it's at least a good chance. And then you have the extra money cap space to address left tackle. And so you could look at it and say, we'd have all those things figured out, and then we could continue to have the starting quarterback on a team friendly deal, which is something that they always love to have here. I'm just saying, like, maybe look at it and think that's an option instead of going with the let's get draft the prospect and have him not throw to anything. Yeah, I'm throwing darts, but I think you can make
I agree with part of that. Like, I think that
you have to get the weapons in the supporting cast, but I think
that Mac can still has the potential to be a real NFL quarterback in the proper setting with the proper pieces around him, if whoever is coaching him can kind of clear out his mind from all the nonsense that he's gotten the last couple of years. But I think you can just let him play out. If that's the case, just let him play out the last year on his contract. Like, yeah, maybe you're going to end up, if he turns into a real quarterback, yeah, you're going to have to pay him next year. But I don't think you can be committing any real future assets to keep around Mac Jones. I would love to see that headline though. Imagine if we like open Twitter tomorrow morning and it was like, Patriots have signed Mac Jones to a 2-year contract extension. Like, I would be very.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't think they'd re-sign Raekwon McMillan after he tore his Achilles, but
I mean, nothing's impossible. I'm just saying, like, I think keeping it, like, I can see the value in keeping him around as a cheap kind of either like rehabilitation project or more ideally like stopgap starter before your quarterback that you drafted in the 2nd round ideally goes on and takes over. But I just don't think it can happen under Belichick, given all the history with them.
I guess the way I'm saying is there's no way it happens. Like, I don't think it's going to happen, and probably it shouldn't happen. But like, if I'm just building something in the simulation, like in Madden, what would I rather have? Like draft Drake May, maybe sign T Higgins, and then like do the other stuff, or get Mac Jones, resign Mac Jones in the GM simulator in Madden on a super team friendly deal, draft Marvin Harrison, sign T Higgins, sign the best tackle available. Like I think maybe that is a faster path to contention, with the added variable that maybe Mac Jones just is terrible. That might actually be the case. But if you think it's salvageable, and we're playing a video game, you can make a case for it.
I mean, I'm always down for chaos. So let's go. Moving on from the quarterback real quickly before we wrap this up, we'll hit some draft stuff right at the very end, but mentioned the Patriots injuries earlier. We talked about Cole Strange. He was carted off the field in this game with a knee injury. Initially appeared serious. We don't have any updates on him at the moment, but the Patriots also lost Connor McDermott to a head injury in this game, Hunter Henry to a ankle injury, I believe it was, and then at least 4 or 5 other Patriots players during this game were treated by the medical staff and eventually returned. Jonathan Jones was one of those, Jawan Bentley, Anthony Jennings, Matthew Slater, Jabril Peppers. This has just been a kind of a season from hell from the Patriots from an injury perspective. I don't think it explains where they are in the standings. I don't think the Patriots are 3-11 because some guys got hurt, but they have had a lot of guys get hurt. On top of those guys that I just mentioned, these are some of the players who weren't available for them in this game due to injury or illness. Ramondre Stevenson, Trent Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kendrick Bourne, Matthew Judon, Christian Gonzalez, Marcus Jones, Daniel Aquale, Riley Reif, Calvin Anderson. Obviously, Reif and Anderson didn't pan out to do much of anything this season, but they were 2 of the Patriots' top free agent signings last offseason, rather. If you're wanting to find any sort of excuse making for the Patriots this year, you can kind of show people this list and say, look at all these impact players that they didn't have. I mean, on defense, they've been without 2 of their best players. Hasn't been crippling for that unit, but offensively, some of these issues have been really problematic, especially Trent Brown being banged up and Kendrick Bourne being out for the season for the last 2 months or so. I don't even really know what my point is for this segment, but just looking at that list in totality, it's kind of striking just how many players the Patriots have lost this season and have been unavailable for them at various points.
Yeah, I think that the last point you made, I think is a good one, and it's not just the players who have been lost for the rest of the season or are on IR right now. It's guys that were unavailable at the start of the season. Jack Jones starting the season on IR. Tyquan Thornton starting the season on IR. Cole Strange not being available to start the season. Mike Nwenu being hurt throughout training camp and at the start of the year. Trent Brown, I believe, missed the second game due to a concussion, I think, if I have that right. So key players, and Devontae Parker's been in and out of the lineup.
Jonathan Jones missed at least a game or 2.
Yeah, and Juju Smith-Schuster, just the fact that he clearly isn't as healthy as they thought he was, whatever the deal is with the knee, not just the ankle this week, but like the knee throughout the year that we've all been talking about. And again, you could argue that's the Patriots' fault anyway. But just their inability to withstand that speaks to the roster building and the lack of depth. But at a certain point, to what you were saying, the injuries become so much that no team's going to be able to withstand them, especially one that doesn't have a good quarterback. And so it absolutely is part of the story. And I think it definitely has contributed to where the record is at. Like, if you want to say the Patriots were a bad team, a flawed team that weren't going to go anywhere, weren't going to make the playoffs or really make a dent this season, no matter what happened with the roster, you could certainly make that case. But I think you also can make the case that the injury situation has a huge part to do with why they are 3-11, just by looking at how close some of these games are. Some of those injuries certainly could have tilted the scales in some of those matchups.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the point about training camp in the regular season is a great one, because I think when you look back at the postmortem of this season and where everything went wrong for the Patriots, some of those training camp injuries, especially on the offensive line, you've got to look back and look at that as a real kind of precursor to the things that were going to go wrong for this offense, because the Patriots offensive line was just completely out of sync for the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. A lot of that contributed to Mac Jones falling off a cliff. Obviously, Juju Smith-Schuster with the knee injury that had continued to linger. Now he's got the ankle. Him not being the same player was a major blow to this offense and essentially removed the Patriots' top receiver and replaced him with nothing. You can't really tell the story of this Patriots season without injuries. That's not to say, again, that injuries are solely to blame for what's happened to them, but it has made it difficult for them to do what they want to do at times on offense and defense. And the Patriots, now that they are 3-11, they still are on track for the number 2 pick in the 2024 NFL draft. There was some interesting movement in the draft order this weekend. The Carolina Panthers, worst team in the league, currently own the number 1 overall pick, which belongs to the Chicago Bears. They won on Sunday for just the second time this season. They upset the Atlanta Falcons, which closed the gap between them and the Patriots and also the Cardinals for that number 1 overall pick. It's still, I would say they're still the clear and overwhelming favorites to land that pick, because for them to lose it, they would have to win at least one more game than the Patriots over these last 3 weeks. Again, that's possible, but the Panthers stink. It was surprising to see them win any games down the stretch here. But behind them, every team that was picking from number 2 to number 10, all of those teams lost. So the Patriots didn't gain any extra cushion from any of those kind of middle of the pack teams like they were able to do last week when a bunch of 4-win teams all won. So closing out here, what's your your view of this draft landscape with 3 weeks left to go?
Yeah, I think I'll probably write about this at some point, but if you're a Patriots fan, the game you're watching this weekend is the Commanders at the Jets. That's a big one because, I think if the Patriots somehow end up losing the tiebreaker or falling behind the Cardinals in the order, like let's say the Patriots finish with 4 wins, Cardinals finish with 3, I do think it's entirely possible that the Cardinals draft Marvin Harrison instead of Drake May. Maybe they don't, but I'm saying I think that's possible. The Commanders are a scary one because maybe they're sold on Sam Howell, but maybe not. And for them, they finished with the Jets, that's a winnable game, especially with the current state of the Jets. But then after that, they have 49ers and Cowboys, and they're sold. You have to pick against them in those games. So you worry about the Patriots finishing with 4 wins, as well as the Commanders. Right now, the Patriots would lose that tiebreaker. And then the Cardinals are the other big one, obviously. They finish with the Bears next weekend. So that's a winnable game. Keep an eye on that one. And then Eagles and Seahawks. But for the Patriots, if the Commanders win this weekend against the Jets and the Patriots lose to the Broncos, the Patriots would be able to clinch a top 3 pick just by losing to the Bills on the road, which I think we all expect them to do. And then it wouldn't be quite as nerve-wracking with that Jets game in the season finale.
Yeah, having a top 3 pick would guarantee the Patriots a shot to draft either Caleb Williams, Drake May, or Marvin Harrison.
Or Jaden Daniels. Some people think he's...
And Jaden Daniels, again, no guarantee of how they would proceed with that pick, but one of those 3 players at the very least will at least be on the table. And one interesting part of this whole draft order discussion that I realized last night, as you mentioned, strength of schedule is the number 1 tiebreaker here. The team with the lower strength of schedule, so the lower opponent winning percentage, would receive the higher pick in the event of a tie. Patriots currently have the edge there over the Cardinals, which is why both teams are 3-11 and the Patriots currently own the higher pick. But if the season ended today, they would lose strength of schedule tiebreakers to the Panthers, Commanders, Bears, Jets, Giants, and Chargers. A bunch of those teams have 5 wins, so there's still a little bit of a gap there between them and the Patriots. And strength of schedule numbers are going to change over these last couple of weeks. They change with every game that's played in the NFL. But just an important thing to keep in mind, if the Patriots do find a way to win 1 or 2 of these final games and get into some of the tiebreaker scenarios with some of those teams there behind them.
Yeah, and that's why it was so big that a lot of those 4-win teams won last weekend, because it did give them that extra cushion. You're right, because it wouldn't take much for them to slip down to 10-13, depending on what happens. So this one, if they had lost to the Steelers, they'd be in a really good spot right now where, a loss in this game would clinch a top 3 pick, I believe, or top 4, regardless. They kind of made it tougher on themselves by winning that game, which is obviously a backwards way of thinking, but again, we're down to the wire here too. So to your point about the strength of schedule, those numbers really can't move too much more here going forward. Some of them can, but stuff like this, like the Bears, the gap between the Patriots and the Bears have a huge advantage there, and that can't be overcome. It's going to be interesting.
And we will see what happens with the Patriots this week. They will be in Denver for a Christmas Eve matchup with the Broncos. I think that game looked pretty easy early in the season, looked pretty difficult for a long stretch while the Broncos were making their run. But Denver did just get blown out by the Detroit Lions on Saturday night. So maybe that's another winnable game for the Patriots. Who knows? They still seem like a team that, if they put everything together, can beat pretty much any team in the NFL, but tend to not put things together and end up losing to basically everybody that they face. But that will be obviously a very important game in this whole draft order discussion. But that'll do it for this week's NESN Patriots podcast. You can follow me on X at Zach Cox NESN. You can follow Dakota at Dak Randall, and you can follow along with all of our Patriots coverage before, during, and after their upcoming game against the Broncos on NESN.com.